Hi everyone, welcome back. Carrying on with some more homeostasis again today, and we're going to be looking at negative feedback. So we're going to be looking at what negative feedback is, some examples that you're going to need to know in the exams. There's 4, so those are glucose control, insulin, glucagon, water levels, so using ADH in the kidney, menstrual cycle, so that's FSH, LH, estrogen and progesterone, and then something new which is called thyroxine. Negative feedback is the series of steps that your body takes in order to bring conditions back to normal. So for example, if you were looking at glucose levels, when glucose increases in your blood, that causes insulin to be released by the pancreas, and then that makes cells start to take in that glucose and turn it into glycogen, and then obviously the blood sugar then goes down, so that everything between triggering off insulin being released to blood sugar levels going down is part of negative feedback. So when the conditions go up, your body takes steps to bring them back down, and then when conditions go down and become too low, your body brings them back up again. So there are 4 examples that we need to look at, as I said earlier, but before we start, I think it's important that we get just a general overview of negative feedback. That way you can go away and learn it, and then apply that to an exam in sort of an insert example here kind of basis. This is just a general overview of negative feedback that you should sort of use to jog your memory if you're asked to describe, say, one of the processes in an exam. So what you would do is you'd have this blue line is your normal level, so whatever your body wants your condition to be, so be it, you know, the optimal amount of glucose in your blood or the optimal temperature of your blood, for example. When the receptor detects an increase, and remember, receptors are just parts of your body that detect changes or stimuli in the environment. If you're not sure, go back and watch the video on the endocrine system and nerves as a whole. Next, you have glands that produce more of a hormone that's going to cause a change. Then that hormone is delivered via the blood to the target organ, whatever that would be, which would act on it. Target organs are usually a gland or you know, cells themselves, which are going to start a different process, and then whatever that action is will bring the level back down to normal. Now this all sounds a bit, you know, vague, so let's try and apply an example. Let's take blood glucose levels. So when blood glucose levels go up, the receptor that detects it is the pancreas. Then the pancreas is going to produce more insulin hormone. This insulin will then act on the target organ, which is the cells in the liver mainly, and other cells in places like the muscles, which will then start to absorb more glucose and turn that into glycogen. And then because that blood glucose isn't in the blood anymore, the level is going to go back down to that normal level. Going in the other direction then, if the level goes down from normal, again, you're going to have a receptor detecting the decrease this time. The gland will then produce less of a hormone, the target organ will act, and then the level will come back to normal. And again, let's apply this to glucose. So glucose levels go down, the pancreas detects the decrease. This means it will start to produce less insulin and more glucagon. The target organ will act, so the liver and muscle cells will this time turn that glycogen back into glucose and release it into the blood, and the blood sugar level will go up back to normal. And remember, your body is always fluctuating between going too high and too low, but it's homeostasis that keeps you on the straight and narrow. What we're going to look at now are 4 examples using this template that you would have to be able to, you know, recall in your exams. Okay, let's look at our first example of negative feedback, which is glucose. We'll start with something that's, you know, people are more familiar with. You have an increase in glucose due to eating sugary food or carbs. Remember, carbs can get broken down into sugar during digestion. The pancreas detects this change, so that is our receptor. This makes more insulin. The insulin is the hormone here. This causes the cells in the liver and muscle to then turn glucose into glycogen, so it converts it from one form to another. Glycogen is insoluble, so that means that it can't dissolve and go back into the blood afterwards, and that glycogen is then stored away, ready for when you need it or when the levels go down. Then, because the glucose is moved out of the blood into storage, those levels go down, and when they reach that normal level, the process will stop. This time, due to exercising, so using that glucose in respiration, or having a diet that's low in sugar or low in carbs, you will cause your pancreas to detect that blood sugar level being low. This means it will make more glucagon, and this causes the cells inside the liver and muscles to then start turning that glycogen store back into glucose, and then that is moved into the blood. So when it's moved into the blood, it's going to bring that level back up to the normal level. And again, these levels are moving up and down, shifting constantly, either side of our normal duty day-to-day activities, but it's homeostasis that keeps it in a safe range. Right, next one we're going to look at is the water levels. Okay, let's have a look at ADH then. So ADH, remember, is to do with the kidney, and if you can't remember what happens in the kidney, there's a two-part that I've got on the channel, so check that out. I'll link it in the description as well. So the water levels in your blood will go up because you're either drinking more fluid or you're sweating less. It could be a cold day, so your body doesn't need to cool you down. Your thermoregulatory centre, which is in your brain, detects that change, which makes the pituitary gland, remember the hypothalamus, is detecting the change as well in the thermoregulatory centre. My lord, try saying that 3 times fast. So that pituitary gland makes less ADH. ADH is antidiuretic hormone, which stops you weeing basically. So it makes less ADH, and this causes the kidneys to reabsorb less water into your blood. So basically your water will go straight into the kidneys, through the kidneys into the bladder, and then you'll wear out, and then that will make the water level in your blood go down to the normal level. So when you drink less fluid or sweat more, your thermoregulatory centre, that hypothalamus, is going to detect that your blood water levels have gone down. This is going to cause the pituitary gland to make more ADH, so more, anti-weeing hormone. That will cause the kidneys to reabsorb more water into your blood, so less will be going to your bladder, and that will mean your blood water levels will go up. Next one we're going to have a look at is thyroxine, which is new. So thyroxine is a hormone that is made in your thyroid gland, which controls your metabolic rate. Now, metabolic rate or metabolism, you've probably heard of before, and it always jogs memories of people being able to eat whatever they like without gaining any weight, lucky beggars. But metabolic rate is less to do with sort of burning all food or processing food, but it's to do with all the chemical reactions in your body. So it's how fast they're all working. So that's things like respiration, that's things like protein synthesis, that's things like aerobic and anaerobic respiration in your body. So they're all included. And the time in your life when they're going fastest is when you're young or when you're growing. So adolescents like yourselves watching, hopefully, if you're watching them doing GCSEs, your thyroid gland is larger than it would be when you get to my age because I've stopped growing. So thyroid glands are bigger or smaller depending on your age. Okay, so let's have a look at what happens when things get too high. Thyroxine levels increase in your body. So for example, you might be going through a growth spurt, so you require faster respiration or faster protein synthesis to build on that muscle mass that you're gaining. So the hypothalamus in your brain will detect that change. That will cause your pituitary gland, which lies just underneath it, to stop making TSH, which stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. So think thyroid is the gland that makes thyroxine, stimulate means to produce or start to make, and then hormone, so if we're breaking it down into bog standard English, the pituitary gland stops making thyroid making hormone. That causes the thyroid to stop making thyroxine, and then that'll bring those thyroxine levels back down to normal. Let's have a look on the other end then. So when the thyroxine levels go down in the blood, the hypothalamus kicks into action, detects that change, and that causes the pituitary gland underneath it to start making TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. This causes your thyroid gland, which is in your sort of upper chest region, to start making thyroxine and pumping that into the blood, and that will bring the levels up. and this will happen, you know, either way. So the thyroid will be making thyroxine, not making thyroxine, depending on what kind of activities you're doing and how fast your metabolism needs to be. The last example we're going to look at is the menstrual cycle hormones. This one is a bit more complicated because it involves negative feedback and something else called positive feedback. So let's talk about that first and then we'll dive in. Before we look at the menstrual cycle, we need to look at what I mean when I say positive feedback and negative feedback. So negative feedback is, as we said before, where the body causes certain steps or certain actions to happen to bring your levels of water or glucose back to normal. Positive feedback is where a stimulus makes a gland release more of that substance, and it increases the amount until it stops, and then it stops making it altogether. So rather than talking about positive feedback, I'm going to talk about stimulating. So anything that I have in this colour at the top is to do with stimulating or releasing, and anything in red is to do with inhibiting or stopping something happening. The main parts of the menstrual cycle that you need to be, you know, familiar with are the pituitary gland and the ovaries. The pituitary gland make FSH and LH, whereas the ovaries make estrogen and progesterone. The arrows are showing how these different hormones interact, and if you're especially doing higher tier, you'll have to be really aware of how these hormones all interact with one another, rather than just knowing what they are and what they do for foundation tier. So if we start from the top, FSH levels go up, which then causes the ovaries to make more estrogen. Estrogen, then when those levels go up, cause FSH to stop being made. LH is made, and increases in LH cause the progesterone to be made more frequently in the ovaries, and then when progesterone levels go up, that starts LH and FSH levels going down. So when you're talking about negative feedback in the menstrual cycle, you're not necessarily having to reference what each of these hormones is doing. You're more talking about how an increase in one affects the amount of the other. If you really wanted to push your application of this information further, you could take one of those hormones from the menstrual cycle and then talk about them in more detail in terms of their own negative feedback loops. So in this example, we're talking about FSH levels. Remember, FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. It's the one that causes the eggs to mature in the ovaries. So if FSH is released, that's going to cause the ovary to make more estrogen. So that's the second thing it does. It causes the egg to mature and it stimulates the ovaries to release estrogen. That's then going to cause the pituitary gland, which will detect those increases in estrogen levels, to stop making FSH, and then that will mean less is released from the pituitary gland and the level's going to go down. And if you're going from the other side, if it's not released, the ovary is not going to be stopped, so it's going to make the ovary is going to then produce less when the levels go down, or the FSH isn't released by the pituitary gland, this is going to stop the ovary being stimulated to make estrogen. So this will cause the pituitary gland to then not detect an increase in estrogen, so it won't make FSH, and that will then cause the pituitary gland to detect those lower levels and start making FSH again, so more is released and the level goes up. Okay, we're going to finish off today by having a quick look at adrenaline. Adrenaline is a weird one because it is not an example of negative feedback, it's actually an example of positive feedback. Adrenaline is a hormone that I'm sure you are familiar with. It's the one that we associate with being scared or being excited. People can be adrenaline junkies if they enjoy dangerous or sort of exciting sports. The adrenaline is produced in little glands that sit on top of each of your kidneys called adrenal glands, and you release adrenaline from your adrenal glands when you are threatened. So something dangerous happens, or you know, you hear something jump out of a bush in front of you and you swear it's a monster but it's actually a pigeon. You are shocked or scared, so if someone, you know, runs up to you and shouts boo, you're gonna have an adrenaline rush, or if you're doing something that's really exciting. If you've ever been on a roller coaster or done something quite daring, you'll find that feeling of your heart racing and you feel pumped and ready to punch the entire world if needs be, that's your adrenaline. Because adrenaline causes your heart rate and your blood glucose to increase. It actually makes your heart pump faster. That means you're able to maximize the amount of respiration each of your cells can do, so you get a big energy boost. So you have more glucose for respiration and your heart rate is pumping to get that glucose and that oxygen to your cells, so you have the energy boost to either fight off a threat or run away. They've actually added another response to this fight or flight. It's called the freeze response as well, because many animals, when threatened, actually don't fight or run away. Sometimes they'll freeze in place. So that, in a nutshell, is what you need to know about adrenaline. Okay, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much for sticking with me and watching this far into the video. I'll be putting a Google Classroom quiz on for my beautiful children at school. But for everyone else, just make sure you have the notes taken down. Make sure you can recall those 4 different types of negative feedback. Know what positive feedback is generally, and then be able to sort of recall within the menstrual cycle especially all the little feedback loops that's going on, and know what adrenaline is and its effects and why it causes your heart rate to go up. Check back soon, because we are going to be delving into the beautiful world of plant hormones if you're doing triple science, and I will see you all very soon regardless anyway. So have a great day and I'll catch you soon.